what would Labour do?
Well, we've already talked about, I mean, some of the taxation decisions that the government have made around inheritance tax, capital gains tax, corporation tax, where you've given away money. Okay. This is what Jeremy was talking about in Prime Minister's question today. We treat our older people at the moment like dogs. It's a disgrace. We shouldn't do that.
But, excuse
we should
me,
be investing in putting the money in the primary care
Would you
services.
reverse the cuts on corporation tax?
You've given away money that actually, quite frankly, we need to spend. And it's not just about an ageing population. That is phony. People know about the ageing population for some time. We've cut the criteria so people can't get community care.
Labour's house of cards is crumbling, and Andrew Neil just pulled out the bottom row. In a jaw-dropping interview, Angela Rayner failed to defend Labour's key policies, exposing a party in disarray. From vague promises on housing to contradictory statements on tax cuts, Rayner's performance has left Labour's credibility in tatters. Watch as we dissect the interview that's got everyone talking and see why even die-hard Labour supporters are now doubting their party's competence. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now, back to the video. Neil methodically undermined Labour's economic credibility as the interview went on. He brought to light stark inconsistencies between their spending plans and tax pledges, making viewers question whether Labour had done any research at all. As Rayner's answers became more evasive, it became evident that Labour's economic plan was based on sand.
I think that the cuts on corporation tax are missing a point because we need that money. We need
so
that money at the moment.
would you reverse it?
Hold on. Inheritance tax.
Would you reverse them?
I think that at the moment, the cuts in corporation tax, the cuts in inheritance tax, the cuts in capital gains tax.
But what's the cut in capital gains tax?
But what's really important, Andrew...
No, excuse me, I'm asking you a question.
Cutting at a time where we need those services and people need those services is the wrong decision to make.
But I'm asking you, would you reverse the cut in corporation tax?
But I'm telling you, Andrew, that our priority is
you're not telling me the question.
I am.
Rayner's inability to articulate Labour's own policies under duress marked a turning point. For many Labour supporters watching at home, it served as a wake-up call. Suddenly, the party with all the answers was unable to defend their most fundamental economic ideas. Critics quickly pointed out that Neil's tough questioning caused Labour's ambitious economic promises to fall apart, even though they sounded good in theory. The stakes increased sharply as viewers watched Labour's economic credibility plummet in real time. Neil is ready to take on Labour's housing pledges next because he can feel the blood in the water. Everyone was wondering how Labour would fare when questioned about their audacious housing claims if they were unable to defend their capital gains tax policy.
They did that as part of the coalition government.
No, they raised the capital gains tax in the coalition government.
Well, what I'm saying, Andrew, and
what you're saying is wrong. They raised the capital gains tax to 28%.
What I'm saying, you've cut, and do you know what? Debt's rising, and the amount of money that's going into the economy, you know, you've not made it better. Our economy is worse as a result of 6 years of austerity and tax cuts to absolutely the richest in the country at the same time where they've told the poorest people in this country over the past... It is true.
This interview was a clear reminder that unsubstantiated confidence is a surefire way to fail in politics. The leadership of Labour had been shown to be unprepared and inexperienced with the practical aspects of economic policy. Viewers prepared for what was expected to be an even more illuminating segment on Labour's housing plans as Neil prepared for the next round. Neil focused on Labour's housing policy after their economic strategy collapsed. Would Angela Rayner be able to support Labour's audacious pledge to construct 1.5 million homes? Or would this pledge also fall apart? Even the most ardent supporters of Labour would be shocked by the response. Neil quickly questioned Rayner about Labour's bold housing promise. Rayner tried to portray Labour's housing plan as the solution to Britain's housing problems, apparently unfazed by her previous gaffes. As though Labour had found a magic wand to instantly solve the housing crisis, she spoke of homes for everyone, from young families to the elderly.
We've got to cut our coffee... No, let me finish this point because you've interrupted me and I want to make this point. It's really serious to people in this country that you've told people we've got to live within our means, we've got to have this austerity, we've got to cut. Now you're saying all of a sudden we can spend money.
No, hold on.
And that's wrong because you're spending it.
You're just off now.
No,
let me bring you back to the question. What would the capital gains tax be under a Labour government and how much would that raise compared to now?
But I've told you, Andrew, what our priority is. It's about how we invest in our public services.
No, I'm asking you how you would raise the money.
However, Neil, who was always skeptical, didn't believe it. He demanded to know the precise target audience for these 1.5 million homes, pressing Rayner for details. Rayner's self-assured exterior started to fall apart at this point. Her evasive responses raised questions about who exactly benefited from Labor's massive housing plan. At home, viewers could almost feel the mounting frustration as Rayner skirted the questions. Families who watched rents soar and overcrowding worsen after years of waiting for affordable housing began to question whether Labor's promises were just empty rhetoric. Then the knockout blow was delivered. Neil threatened to expose Labor's housing pledges by presenting Rayner with immigration data. He brought up a startling statistic. Immigrants may be able to occupy more than 5 out of every 7 new homes.
Decisions that the government have made and the decisions on where they're spending current money is completely inappropriate.
So how much would you say?
You've cut 50%. In my constituency, both of my councils have seen over 50% cuts to their budget.
By changing the corporation tax and changing the capital gains tax to raise more money.
You don't cut taxes when you need that money
much?
To help. You should be investing.
You don't know, do you?
You should be investing
you just
in those
don't know,
services
do you?
in our areas where it's required. They're spending, they're cutting tax for those that the richest, and they're spending money in the wrong places.
Rayner was left frantically trying to make Labor's housing plans work with the realities of Britain's shifting demographics after learning this. Rayner found it difficult to explain how Labour would address the real housing demand in the UK, which led to a critical moment in the interview. Her evasive answers only increased public mistrust. The prospect that Labour's housing plan might not even address their most urgent needs added to the frustration that voters already felt from unmet promises. It became painfully evident as the segment came to an end that Labour's ambitious housing plan was not based on solid principles. Once a pillar of Labour's campaign, the promise of 1.5 million new homes now appeared to be little more than a catchphrase. The audience was left doubting not only Labour's housing policy, but also their capacity to fulfill any of their pledges. A deeper crisis of competence within Labour's leadership was revealed in the interview, leaving many to wonder if the party can regain the trust of the public, or if the interview has sealed their doom in the next election. For Labour, the consequences of Andrew Neil's interview with Angela Rayner have been disastrous. Voters are clearly losing faith in Labour's ability to govern, as evidenced by the party's approval ratings, which have fallen to an astounding 61. This is a serious crisis of competence at the core of Labour's leadership, not just a few awkward responses or policy blunders. Voters are faced with some difficult questions as the next election draws near. Can we rely on Labour to fulfill any of its commitments? Or has a party that is all talk and no substance been revealed by this interview? There are significant ramifications for British politics. What does it mean for our democracy if Labour is unable to mount a strong opposition? Labour now has the upper hand. Has Neil's interview dealt them a fatal blow, or can they win back the trust of the voters? One thing is certain, Labour has a steep hill to climb if they want to win back the public's trust. Only time will tell.